Back in the early 40s, it was known as one of the toughest prisons in the United States.
Most of the inmates here were doing upwards of life in prison. There was a lot of gangsters and gang members throughout the early 20s up into the 70s.
The prison just sort of took on the notoriety of its residents.
Due to its Gothic look, it was interpreted as a very dangerous and notorious prison. My reaction would be, if I was coming into a facility like Joliet back in the 1900s, that my life would be over.
Joliet was built to replace the first penitentiary in Illinois, which was the Alton facility. Alton was very outdated and overcrowded. So in 1853, in his inaugural speech, Governor Joel Matson announced that he would be looking for a new prison site somewhere in the northern region of the state. Well, it just so happened that Governor Matson was from Joliet, so no doubt Joliet was strongly recommended by him. However, the site that Joliet Correctional Center sits on was actually a very good choice for a prison. It was 72 acres. It was called originally Stoneville. The state purchased it for about $100 an acre. It's solid limestone, so all of the building material is right here. It would be virtually impossible for a prisoner to tunnel underneath. There was a fresh spring on site, so they had plenty of fresh water. You had the Chicago-Alton Railroad that ran right through the prison, and the I&M Canal sits to the west of the facility. So that, coupled with the fact that it's just 40 miles south of the growing metropolis of Chicago, made Joliet really an ideal site. The original architects that designed the prison were William Boyington and Otis Wheelock. And Boyington actually designed the state capitol and the Chicago Water Tower.
The structure is set on 15 acres within Joliet. It has 4 walls, 3 of which are 25 feet high, 6 foot thick at the bottom, progressing up to 2 feet to the top. The front wall is comprised of the administration building and the east and west house, which connects the other 3 walls.
The original design of the facility was a castellated Gothic. So it has your Gothic castle look, very medieval. The guard towers on all 4 sides, all 4 corners, appear to be turrets.
Historically, back in the 1900s, the prison look was pretty much based off of Joliet and other prisons around the country. They're very Gothic looking, very hardened looking. Throughout the years, they have evolved into a different look, which is a double fence style, maybe more program orientated, different building looks, to try to at least make the inmates feel a little bit like they're at least have something to look forward to. Originally back in 1857, when they started construction, 1858, there was inmates that came from the Alton prison that were shipped up here, and they facilitated all the construction here under the supervision of local and private contractors.
About 200 inmates, male prisoners, and about a half a dozen female prisoners. And they lived in barracks. 1860 is when the prison was actually open. That's when they shipped the final inmates from Alton to Joliet. Joliet was one of the largest facilities in Illinois, and it maintained that reputation up through the 70s. It was a maximum security institution. So you had your murderers, rapists, the heavier felons were here at Joliet. But generally, as a rule, they were younger than some of your, your older, hardened criminal types. You had your reception and classification inmates in the East Cell House. And then you had your, what we call our permanent population inmates in the West Cell House. Permanent population would be your general population inmates, your protective custody inmates, and your segregation inmates.
To qualify to get into the segregation cells or disciplinary confinement cells, you would break our disciplinary rules, whether it was assaulting the staff or disobeying a direct order, possession of contraband.
General population inmates are your inmates who can participate in programs, they can attend school, they can hold down jobs. They're your, I guess you would say, your average inmate. Protective custody inmates are inmates who are requesting protective custody because they're in fear of their life. Your reception and classification inmates are inmates who come in from all the county jails in the northern region of the state. They are processed through the facility within 3 to 4 weeks. They are classified, and then they're shipped from here to one of the other 27 facilities throughout the state that we feel their classification best suits them. There's approximately 24,000 inmates that go through the reception process every year. Back when the prison was first opened in the 1800s, it was, very, very strict. The inmates walked single file, no talking absolutely whatsoever. They had to face forward. They walked with one hand on the shoulder of the inmate in front of them. They spent most of their days out working and then the evenings in their cell, reading, quiet. They couldn't talk. That went on for a while, and then the pendulum swung the other way. They introduced programs. They introduced college programs, high school programs. They introduced a lot of religious programs into the facilities. So it seems like there's two sides to prison administration. One is security, the other one is programs. And for some reason, it just seems like there's always more of an emphasis on one or the other for each administration. Joliet actually did have a death chamber. There were actually 3 places in the state that did electrocutions. One was Joliet. They had everything north of Springfield, except for Cook County. Cook County was another one of the sites. They did all of their own executions by electric chair up there. And Menard had everything south of Springfield.
Approximately 98 inmates have been executed within the state of Illinois. During the time period from the 20s to the 40s, there was, I believe, 13 that were executed here at Joliet Correctional Center. The death penalty was then reinstated back in 1990, and all the executions now are lethal injection take place at Stateville Correctional Center.
Joliet has gone through many, many changes over the years. After it opened in 1860, there was a new hospital unit that was built in 1895. The original dining room was built in 1903. The east and west cell house were completely regutted and reconstructed in the early 40s and 50s. They modernized and put in heat, water.
There's many additions that was added to Joliet. Once it was built across the street, there was a women's facility that was built there. That was opened up in 1900, and that stayed open until the Dwight Correctional Center was opened and the women were transferred there.
Constant change, constant updating. I mean, you figure that the prison was built in 1860. There was no indoor plumbing, no electricity, no anything. So they've done a lot of remodeling over the year. This was always an extremely busy facility, a lot faster paced in compared to the other institutions. So it's very strange to come back here and have everything empty and silent and quiet.
Joliet Correctional Center closed due to budgetary reasons, and it closed in February of 2002. It is now managed by our central management system, which is in Springfield, Illinois. Right now is just used for TV and movie or documentaries. Our future here with Joliet Correctional Center is unsure at this time, but it perhaps is up for sale.